The place of the Canadian Crown in relation to the Canadian Armed Forces is both constitutional and ceremonial, the Sovereign of Canada being the supreme commander of the forces, while he or she and the rest of the Canadian royal family hold honorary positions in various branches and regiments, embodying the historical relationship of the Crown to its armed forces. This modern construct stems from Canada's system of constitutional monarchy, and through its 500 years of monarchical history. The role of the Canadian sovereign within the Canadian Armed Forces is established within the Canadian Constitution, the National Defence Act, and the Queen's Orders and Regulations for the Canadian Forces. This relationship is symbolically represented today through royal symbols such as crowns on military badges and insignia, coats of arms, royal portraits, and the grant of the royal prefix to various military units and institutions. Role in command. The role of the Canadian Crown in the Canadian Armed Forces is established through both constitutional and statutory law. The National Defence Act states that the Canadian Forces are the armed forces of Her Majesty raised by Canada, and the Constitution Act 1867 vests command-in-chief of those forces in the Sovereign, presently Queen Elizabeth II, though the Sovereign's representative, the Governor-General of Canada, carries out the duties and bears the title of that position on the monarch's behalf. Since Canadian Confederation, 3 members of the royal family have been titled as Commander-in-Chief: the Duke of Argyll, Prince Arthur, Duke of Connaught and Strathearn, and the Earl of Athlone. Formally, there is a direct chain of command from the Queen of Canada to the Governor-General, through the Chief of the Defence Staff to all of the officers who hold the Queen's Commission, and through them, to all members of the Canadian Forces. No other person, including the Prime Minister, Cabinet Ministers, nor public servants is part of the chain of command, nor does any other person have any command authority in the Canadian Forces. An arrangement maintained to ensure that the military is an agent for and not a master of the state. As such, all new recruits into the Canadian Forces are required to recite the oath of allegiance to the monarch and his or her heirs and successors. According to the National Defence Act, the use of traitorous or disloyal words towards the reigning king or queen is a service offence and may be punishable by up to 7 years' imprisonment. Declarations of war, the mobilization of troops, and the organization of the forces all fall within the royal prerogative. Direct parliamentary approval is not necessarily for such, though the cabinet may seek it nonetheless, and the Crown in Parliament is responsible for allocating monies necessarily to fund the military. The monarch issues letters patent, known as the Queen's Commission, to commissioned officers in the Canadian Army, Royal Canadian Navy, and the Royal Canadian Air Force. Further, all regulations for the Canadian Forces are set out by the Sovereign in the Queen's Regulations and Orders. Neither the monarch nor the Viceroy, however, involve themselves in direct military command per constitutional convention. Both must almost always exercise the royal prerogative on the advice of the Cabinet, although the right to unilaterally use those powers in crisis situations is maintained. 3 military units comprise the Household Division, symbolically charged specifically with protecting the monarch and Governor-General, the Governor-General's Horse Guards, the Governor-General's Foot Guards, and the Canadian Grenadier Guards. Symbolism and traditions. The Canadian Forces have derived many of the traditions and symbols from the British Army, Navy, and Air Force, including those with royal elements. Contemporary icons and rituals, however, have evolved to include elements reflective of Canada and the Canadian monarchy. Members of the country's royal family also continue the 2-century-old practice of maintaining personal relationships with the Canadian Forces as well as individual units, around which the military has developed complex protocols. ceremonies and protocols. Many ceremonies and rituals of the Canadian Forces have a royal connection. For example, the military traditionally mounts what is known as the Queen's Guard, which is made up of contingents of infantry and cavalry soldiers who are charged with guarding the royal residences in Canada and the United Kingdom. Canada has mounted the King's Queen's Guard 8 times since 1916, including Canadian coronation contingents for King George VI in May 1937 and for Queen Elizabeth II in May 1953. Also, whenever the sovereign or a member of her family is in Ottawa, they will lay a wreath at the National War Memorial and will do the same if at a Canadian War Monument overseas. Members of the royal family will also be present for other military ceremonies besides those related to any honorary ranks they hold, including inspections of the troops and anniversaries of key battles and victories, such as commemorations of D-Day. For such events, an order of precedence is followed for organizing participants and according respected honors. The official Canadian Order of Precedence is the only one used in relation to the military, in which the monarch takes first place, followed by the Governor-General, and then other members of the royal family. The provincial viceroys fall in at 16th on the list, behind the Leader of Her Majesty's loyal opposition. The royal anthem of Canada, God Save the Queen, is normally played, as may be the viceregal salute for the Governor-General or Lieutenant Governor, if either is representing the sovereign. A loyal toast may also be given. It is required at all formal mess dinners and toasts the health of the monarch. Canadian Forces members and officers are required to stand during the toast and to salute any time the royal anthem is played. This stipulation was challenged in 2008 by an officer of Princess Patricia's Canadian Light Infantry and upheld by the Canadian Forces Grievance Board, the Chief of the Defence Staff, and the Federal Court of Canada. Visual markers. A number of flags and banners are used by the Canadian Forces to signify loyalty, nationality, units, and/or specific events. One used throughout the military is the Royal Union flag, which was approved by the Federal Parliament in 1964 for continued use as a symbol of Canada's membership in the Commonwealth of Nations and of her allegiance to the Crown. Quote, "This flag, however, is generally flown only on specified days and whenever instructed by National Defence Headquarters. Others symbolize royal and viceroyal figures or royal honours bestowed on a unit or regiment. The finial capping the tip of a flagpole carrying the Queen's Canadian Standard, Governor-General's Standard, Queen's Colours, or other royal banners must be in the form of the crest of the Royal Arms of Canada. Unique regimental colours and Queen's colours are presented to various regiments, units, and commands, consisting mostly of national and royal symbols combined. They today act as visible symbols of pride, honour and devotion to sovereign and country. Colours are thus consecrated objects. It is expected that everyone will rise to attention and salute upon passing a stand of uncased colours. Authorization to possess a Queen's colour may be granted, and the colour presented only by the Queen or the Governor-General, and the colours must be dipped in the presence of the monarch or other members of the royal family. Those in the royal family may also present a royal banner to a unit to commemorate specific services rendered and as a mark of royal favour. For example, Lord Strathcona's horse received a royal banner from King Edward VII for the combat in South Africa, and the Queen Mother presented the Canadian Forces Medical Service with a royal banner in 1985. These typically include a mark unique to the royal individual, such as the cipher. Other flags that are held by an individual also bear royal symbols. The Queen's Harbour Master, who is in charge of Her Majesty's Canadian dockyards, is accorded a flag that consists of a white-bordered national flag defaced in the centre with a white disc bearing a crown and the acronym QHM-CPSM, for Queen's Harbour Master, Capitaine de Port de Sa Majesté, to signify the sovereign's place at the head of the Canadian Forces. Many badges include a crown in the design, originally designed by the British King of Arms. Since 1968 they have been created by the Department of National Defence and then the Canadian Heraldic Authority. Each primary badge of a branch, formation, or unit must be approved by the Governor-General as titular Commander-in-Chief. Since the monarch designated approval of new badges to the Governor-General in the mid-1980s, though permission for use of royal titles and personal symbols such as the crown must be personally approved by the sovereign. The Queen's Canadian arms and her royal cipher are also displayed throughout the forces, including on banners, badges, and military band instruments. Royal designations. Many regiments of the Canadian Army have also been granted the use of the prefix royal in the regiment's name, while others bear the name of a member of the royal family. The royal prefix, termed a royal designation, is an honor that demonstrates royal favor for the organization to whose name the prefix is applied. Its award is an exercise of the royal prerogative and it does not expire unless revoked by the Crown in Council of the organization that received the designation ceases to exist. If the name of the regiment should change after the prefix is granted, the word royal may be retained preceding the new name, such as when the Royal Northwest Mounted Police was renamed in 1920 as the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. Honorary appointments. Members of the royal family, including the sovereign, take on honorary appointments, known as royal appointments, related to army regiments or Air Force or Navy units, a practice that is thought to have originated with the appointment of Princess Louise, Duchess of Connaught, as Colonel-in-Chief of the 199th Battalion in 1917. The appointment, intended as an honor for regiments and units and to reinforce loyalty to the Crown, is made by the Crown in Council and the appointee, known as an honorary, acts akin to a patron and holds the role either for life or until voluntarily stepping down of the unit or regiment is disbanded. Positions include Colonel-in-Chief, Captain-General, Commodore-in-Chief, Admiral, and others. Requests for a royal honorary made by the regiment or unit through the chain of command, and a holder is intended to be a guardian of regimental traditions and history, promote the regiment's identity and ethos, and an advisor to the commanding officer on virtually all issues excluding operations. Quote, they will carry out a number of associated duties, such as attending regimental dinners, presenting new colors, trooping the color, and viewing field training exercises. Attendance and participation in these events may be at the direction of the ministers of the Crown of the regiment itself. As members of the Canadian Forces, royal honoraries may wear forces uniforms, both dress and operational. In 2011, to mark his 90th birthday, Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh, was appointed to the top ranks in all three branches of the Canadian Forces: General of the Land Force Command, General of the Air Command, and Admiral of the Maritime Command, making him the first to receive such appointment at the highest level. Though non-royals have been appointed as Colonels-in-Chief, the practice is rare, and the placement of former Governor-General Adrienne Clarkson as Colonel-in-Chief of Princess Patricia's Canadian Light Infantry caused some controversy as a break with tradition. Military-related organizations, institutes, benevolent funds, leagues, associations, messes, etc. may also receive the patronage of a person belonging to the royal family. As with regiment and unit-related appointments, those who act as patron will correspond with organization leaders, participate in ceremonial events, assist with fundraising, and the like. Applications for royal patronage are made via the Office of the Governor-General to receive the honor. An organization must prove to be long-lasting and have aims and objectives that will earn the approval of the person from whom patronage is requested. Infrastructure, buildings, installations, and geographical features related to the Canadian Forces. A Department of National Defence can only be named for living or deceased members of the Canadian royal family, living or deceased former governors-general, and deceased distinguished persons. All Canadian naval ships are designated with the prefix Her Majesty's Canadian Ship, or HMCS. These vessels must be decorated with signal flags for specific royal occasions, including Accession Day, the actual birthday of the monarch, the official birthday of the monarch, and the birthday of the royal consort. Orders, decorations, and medals. Military honors available to members of the forces also have a link to the crown, due foremostly to the fact that the Queen is the fount of honor from which these orders, medals, and decorations come. The Queen's effigy or a street, Edward's crown thus appear on the insignia of orders or on medals. Some honors and decorations are also granted to civilians, but a few were specifically awarded by the sovereign to her Canadian Forces personnel. These are the Order of Military Merit, the Victoria Cross, Star of Military Valor, a Medal of Military Valor, the military divisions of the Meritorious Service Cross and Meritorious Service Medal, and the War and Operational Service Medals. Further, injury or death in action is recognized by the Sacrifice Medal and Memorial Cross, while acts of bravery or diligence on the battlefield are recognized by Field Commander reports to the sovereign, known as mentioned in dispatches.